Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Wing-King Wong, MIT class of '84, founding president of the MIT Chinese Alumni Group. Today's topic is my path to transplant surgery. We are honored to present Dr. Irene Kim, who is MIT class of '99, Bachelor of Science in Biology. Dr. Kim is the director of the Comprehensive Transplant Center of the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Los Angeles, California. She was also the first female transplant surgeon to join the Transplant Center. Dr. Kim is an expert in liver and kidney transplantation. After MIT, Dr. Kim received her doctorate in medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. She then completed her residency in general surgery at the Tufts Medical Center and her fellowship in abdominal transplantation at Stanford University. Dr. Kim is a published investigator. In 2015, the Transplantation Society awarded Dr. Kim the Leslie Brand Award for the best scientific manuscript. In 2020, Dr. Kim was elected counselor for the American Society of Transplant Surgeons and as a board member of the United Network for Organ Sharing, the governing body that oversees and adjudicates the nation's transplant and organ procurement system. Dr. Kim also holds other important leadership positions in both national and international surgical and transplant societies, including the American Society of Transplant Surgeons, Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, the International Liver Transplant Society, the International Pediatric Transplant Association, and the Society of University Surgeons. Dr. Kim will discuss her path to transplant surgery and to becoming the director of the Transplant Center, such as how she overcame the challenges along the way, including being a woman and a person of color. Dr. Kim will also discuss how she maintains work-life balance. Dr. Kim's presentation will be followed by Q&A. You may start typing your questions into the Q&A box now. You may also upvote the questions that you like. We welcome your participation. And here is Dr. Kim. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Wing-King, for this opportunity to talk to the MIT Chinese Alumni Group. I'm going to share my screen here. And a thumbs up. Wing-King, you see my slides. It's been really fun to ruminate on my career and have this opportunity to speak to the Alumni Network. As Wing-King said, I am an abdominal transplant surgeon. I specialize in liver and kidney transplants, and I direct the program here at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And I am an MIT alumnus, a proud MIT alumnus, class 99. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that for some reason, it's a common phenotype to be an MIT graduate and a transplant surgeon. And please forgive me if I'm forgetting or missing anybody else who is also a transplant surgeon. But there are several other transplant surgeons who are also MIT graduates. Marwan Kazmi, one of my very best friends, who is chief of transplant at BI Deaconess. Dr. Kristen Raven, also abdominal, kidney, liver transplant surgeon and pancreas at BI Deaconess in Boston, and Fawzia Boot, who is at Penn State University and an abdominal transplant surgeon. So I wish I could say I was unique, but we tend to, I guess, choose a common difficult pathway. And I want to just acknowledge my co-surgeons here in this story. So I am a transplant surgeon. I specialize, as I said, in liver and kidney transplantation. And these are long, technically challenging, difficult cases, often performed in the middle of the night. I often joke that my block time is at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sundays. And it's true, organ offers come in at any time of day. It's really rewarding. There are opportunities for pediatric transplantation in my career and living donor surgeries. I love being a part of that story. And this is just a photo of the team. This is me taking a fellow through a liver transplant. This is the back of one of our liver transplant anesthesiologists, Peter Wingfield, and a huge team that goes into every liver transplant that we would perform at Cedars-Sinai. Of course, transplant would not be possible without the very generous gift of life from our donors, both living donor and deceased donor. And this is the photograph on the left is taken, and this is a very standard practice done throughout the world, but we take a moment of silence before we procure the organs from a deceased donor. And this is a team from China participating in this practice and just really acknowledging the gift that this deceased donor individual has made. This is a photograph of, very popular star Selena Gomez, who received a living donor kidney transplant, and her living donor who enabled that to happen. So I would not have a career, I would not have this job if it weren't for the generous gift of these individuals. So I practice at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I am told that it is the largest hospital west of the Mississippi. I don't know if that still is true, but we are a 900 plus bed hospital right in the heart of Los Angeles, and basically really close to Beverly Hills in LA. We have over 10,000 employees at Cedars-Sinai, and we serve a population of about 10 million people in the LA area. We just received the number 6 ranking on US News and World Report, and in transplant volume, we're a top 10 transplant program if you include abdominal and thoracic organs altogether. So we're a major abdominal transplant center, and this is where I get to work. And this is the team that I get to lead. We have an incredible abdominal surgical team of 7 surgeons currently. We just recruited another surgeon back. Everybody here does liver transplant. Some of us do pancreas transplant. Some of us do kidney transplants. But recently in January, I was just promoted to be the director of this division. And I find it such an honor and a blessing to be able to lead this fantastic group of people. And we are like a family, we're a team, and we get through a lot of very complex, difficult operations. This is the trajectory and the trend of the volume that we see at Cedars-Sinai. So as a director of the transplant program, I have some responsibilities for thoracic organ transplantation as well as abdominal transplant. I came to Cedars in 2012, where we were performing nearly about 370 total solid organ transplants. And now today, in 2021, just last year, we finished the year with a record-breaking 573 solid organ transplants that included nearly 270 kidney transplants, 113 liver transplants. And so you can just see that upward trajectory at Cedars-Sinai and the number of transplants and the number of life-saving procedures we perform. So this speaks a little bit to the female-male demographic of transplant surgery. About 1 in every 5 transplant surgeons is a woman. And as you get higher in rank, and this is where I am right now as a center director, only about 7% of center directors are women. And it's a very arduous path to transplant surgery, which is why I'm guessing I'm here today talking to you. So after medical school, which took me personally from ages 22 to 26, then I started my surgery residency program. It's typically a 7-year residency process because most people do 2 years of research. So that's what I did. I did 5 years of general surgery training. It took me to age 33. And then after completing a surgery residency, training program, I did a 2-year fellowship in abdominal transplantation. And so I was advanced age by the time I got my first real job for my parents, about age 36 by the time I got my first attending ship job. So it's a long process to becoming a transplant surgeon. And this is a little bit about the training. The fellowship training in particular, that 2 years is really hard. There are no work hour restrictions in transplant surgery. We have really long cases. For 2 years, you don't have a vacation. You are the person that everyone relies on as a fellow. And there were no weekends off. So with this kind of grueling schedule right in your mid-30s, we ask, how can we encourage more women to pursue this field, and particularly transplant surgeon? And here I am in this photo, and this is the photo that was in the MIT flyer, but I'm taking one of my female fellows through a liver transplant and encouraging women to choose this as a vocation. So I've thought a lot about this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and this path today and achieving gender equity in transplantation or any other field for that matter. I'm going to talk about my story and my path to transplant and how various aspects of gender representation affected my feelings about the field and what I would like to see happen. I just want to put out a disclaimer that this is my own personal commentary and not necessarily the journey that other people share, but I do think that with each individual's path to their career, we can learn a lot and build on those lessons to improve every field. So my story begins back in when I was a child, and this is a photo of my mother, my beautiful mother, and my younger brother circa 1982. I think I was already exhibiting a lot of sass at the age of 5 in this photo. But my parents are of Korean heritage. They are both from Seoul, South Korea, and this is a beautiful stock photo of Namdaemun Gate in Seoul, South Korea. It's a really busy, beautiful, bustling city. And back when they immigrated in the 1970s, Seoul had a population of about 7 million people. This is a photo of my mom and dad. They came for their graduate school education, and they actually met in the United States around 1975. My father is an economist. He got his PhD in economics. And my mother got her PhD in chemistry. And after they graduated from graduate school, where did they end up moving to? Well, they moved to Bowling Green, Ohio, home of the National Tractor Pull, which is this small little town. It's that dot that you see on the map. Really lovely, peaceful, wholesome place to grow up. There is a university there where my parents got tenure, and they went from a city of 7 million people in 1975 to a city of almost, I think at the time, 10,000 people, and a really small footprint, 13 square miles of land. This is a photo of the National Tractor Pull that happens every year in Bowling Green. And as you can see, it's a very homogeneous population. Less than 1% of the population reports themselves as Asian. And we'd have like only a handful of traffic lights in Ohio. So it was a little bit of a culture shock for my parents. This was my normal. This is what I grew up as. And I love this map. This is from recent census data, but it shows I'm so fortunate to live in California. The light brown represents the Asian population percentage. And in California, it's about 15% Asian. In Ohio, it's still about 2%. So it's still pretty homogeneously Caucasian in Ohio. I think nationally, the percentage is about 5.6%. But we were one of a handful of Asian families in Bowling Green, Ohio. And I remember in first grade, a little girl asked me if I was Black. And she clearly knew that I was a woman of color, but because there were so few other examples, she didn't know what race I was. And I remember her asking me this, and it just totally innocent, but it definitely spoke to the lack of diversity of where I grew up. And it was a little hard integrating myself into the public school setting there as one of the very few Asian people growing up. But I was also grew up very comfortable being an outlier. And I think that set the path for me and being comfortable being an outlier in my career. So this is from the Pew Research Center, and I just love reading these kind of studies and data. But the Pew Research Center is a nonpartisan think tank, and it informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends. They do not take policy positions, and this is a survey that they conducted in 2012, asking Asian Americans, why do you move to the United States? And I think the overall message was Asian Americans move to the US for a chance at a better life. I don't know if I would have phrased it at the top line, opportunity to get ahead, but certainly conditions for raising children and the opportunity for reaching your dreams motivated my parents. And I'm so grateful to them for that opportunity. But it was still tough growing up in Bowling Green, where I did feel very much like an outlier. And so my parents made the decision for high school to send me to a single-sex, all-girls parochial school called Notre Dame Academy, and this is in Toledo, Ohio. And you can see this school drew a much more diverse student body. Here I am on the far right of that photo. And this was a really serendipitous decision that my parents made for me on my behalf, sending me to an all-girls school. And it was here at Notre Dame that I gravitated towards math and science. I didn't play a sport. I was the captain of the science Olympiad team and mathematics team. That was my sport. But I was a self-identified nerd and mathematics person at that age. And so it was just a really great environment to grow that and blossom. And so then it made me interested in high school education. And unfortunately, this is data from the National Science Foundation, but female high school students are less likely to take advanced AP calculus courses and physics courses compared to their male counterparts. And the one exception is biology, which I ended up studying at MIT. But in these other fields like computer science, physics 2, calculus BC, for whatever reason, more males end up taking these classes and pursuing these advanced placement tests than females. And this is pretty recent. This is 2018 data. So I wondered if my single-sex education contributed to my taking the AP physics exam, AP mathematics exam. And so I did a little bit of research, and this is a study from the US Department of Education looking at hundreds of studies that look at the differences between single sex. And by the way, this is not just all female schools, but also all male schools, single sex education versus co-education. And if children fare better in math and science or other fields in one or the other. And really, they couldn't delineate, in my opinion, very meaningful take-home messages that maybe there was a slight preponderance that students did better in single-sex education in math and science and English in particular, but really many of these studies, over 50% of them had a null findings, that there really wasn't any difference between single-sex or co-education. But I definitely think about this because I do think that going to an all-girls school really elevated me in terms of math and science. My 7-year-old daughter, just a couple of weeks ago told me that, yeah, boys are so good at math. And it just rattled me so much that she said that. And I just think that it's a null discussion in single-sex education. And that was my experience. I do think it catapulted me to gravitate towards math and science. And then, of course, that brought me to MIT. And I don't need to tell this audience about our combined love for math and science. I think that really unifies the student body getting into MIT. And I'm sure everyone is well aware of the freshman year requirements. It is quite weighted heavily towards math and science. The requirements in the freshman year, at least when I was a freshman, were 2 semesters of calculus, 2 semesters of physics, a semester of chemistry, biology. And I loved at MIT that you just need to take 2 semesters of the humanities. And so foreign language and literature and history and philosophy and all these other fields, you just had to take 2 of them in that general field, and that fulfilled your requirements for undergrad. But of course, you go to MIT because you love math and science, maybe engineering, and this is what brings us there. MIT gave me some of the best years of my life, and I can still say that. You're going to see some awesome 90s fashion in this slide, but here I am front and to the left. This is my living group. I lived in E-Entry in McGregor dormitory, which is still around. Here I am with Sarah Weddington. She recently passed away a few months ago, but she was the lawyer who represented Jane Roe in Roe v. Wade, and she's the reason why women have the right to choose whether or not they want to seek an abortion during pregnancy, and I thank her for that. And then this was a bunch of friends and I in the 1996 Walk for Hunger, and it was just such a exciting time of passion and excitement, and just really loved my college day experience. And MIT gave me lifelong friendships, and here I am with Christine Kornelak, who's also the same class as I am, and her daughter Isabel, 1999. In my wedding party, my maid of honor, Lee Ji-sa, 1998 graduate, and Shannon Mitchell, now Shannon Dahl, as a bridesmaid. And I went to Hawaii last year to see my MIT friends in my entry, Berta, Lin Lau, Melissa Kanemasu, Kolian, and many others, Robin Grandel, and Eric, just so many friends from MIT. So shout out if you're listening, but thank you for your friendship. So I think I should point out that there is still a gender discrepancy at MIT, and I think that did shape my feelings of entering more male-dominated fields. So going from an all-girls school, high school, going to MIT, at the time when I entered MIT, it was about 60% male, 40% female student body. And it's gotten better. In 2020, these are data from the university, 53% male, 47% female. I do think, though, one of the troublesome trends, if you will, is that there is a paucity of female representation in the faculty at MIT. And I'll be honest, I can't recall that many female faculty that I had. 2 women who were really influential in my life were Helen Lee and Evelyn Hammonds. And I really clung on close to them because I really did feel like I needed female mentorship. And I thank you so much, if you're listening, for your contributions to my education. But still, just in 2020, 78% of the faculty are male, and 25% here listed, that doesn't add up, but are female. And when you get to the different ranks of professors, that discrepancy becomes even more pronounced, where the full professor rank, 80% are men and 20% are women. And so I think that that's bothersome and something that we have to work on as an alumni group, and also that MIT has to work on as a university. So I went to medical school, as Wing-King said. I went to UCSF, and this is a beautiful aerial photo of the Moffitt campus. UCSF is much bigger now than when I was a medical student. I initially thought I wanted to do pediatrics. I love children, and I ended up not liking my pediatrics rotation, and I fell in love with surgery. And it's because of these 2 individuals here. I think when you're pursuing something maybe so difficult, demanding, it really helps to have mentorship and people who you want to emulate. And that was these 2 people. I did my rotation in general surgery at San Francisco General Hospital, and I felt like, oh, this is what it means to be a doctor. I want to do these life-saving procedures. I want to be just like these 2 individuals. And so I remember telling my friends in my medical school class, yeah, I'm going to do general surgery for my career. And it was like groans. I'm like, oh, Irene, don't choose that. You're going to not have a life. And why, you're a fun-loving person. Why are you doing this? And And I have to admit, I did grapple with that decision a little bit, and the data aren't that great. In 2003, when I applied, just about 30% of the applicant pool in general surgery was women. So again, there was a paucity of women in general surgery, but I just could not get away from this feeling that this is really what I wanted to do with my life. And I will say that it is getting better. This is AAMC in data. And now in general surgery, 40% of women and female residents are women. So this is a more recent study, but I do think it is equilibrating now, and hopefully in all fields where it's been traditionally more male dominated. And you can see the other fields here listed if you're interested in any other specialties in medicine. So I decided on surgery, and then I did something completely different, and I decided to take a gap year. And so this is just a plug for people out there. If you have kids or you are thinking about a gap year yourself, this was fantastic. So between my third and my fourth years in medical school, I decided to live in France for 1 year. I worked in a laboratory doing research, but really I just had this amazing experience, this amazing time. And I think it's a very humbling experience to live in another country and live on someone else's turf, that everyone needs to go through that. And all the things that we assume as Americans or as young people, it gets flipped all upside down when you live in another country. And so this ended up being a very formative experience for me. France was such a huge part of my life, and I have many of the friendships still to this day from that 1 year spent abroad. But then I had to come back to reality, and then I came back to my residency. So I did my residency training at Tufts University in Boston. It was also just a great experience. We worked really, really hard, and we played really hard and made really strong friendships. These are photos with me and my co-residents, and we would play practical jokes. The woman in the middle is Sarah McPartland, and one call night we wrapped our call room, our call bed in saran wrap so that she didn't have access to it. But you go through a battle together and you just form these incredible friendships. And to this day, many of these people are still my closest circle of friends. So I will pause and say that I unfortunately did have a Me Too moment in my residency training. General surgery residency can be kind of an old boys culture, old boys mentality. I thought I would combine my love of pediatrics and surgery and be a pediatric surgeon. And so I was very interested. This is a photo of one of the pediatric wards at Tufts Hospital. And unfortunately, the pediatric surgeon at Tufts at the time just had a really hard time relating to women. And the only way he could relate to a woman was in sexual terms. And it was just it was a problem. And he asked me out incessantly as a resident, and he threatened to take me off of the pediatric surgery rotation when I dismissed his advances. I gained weight in my second year of residency, and he called me the chubby resident for that whole year. And yes, I did report him. I reported him to the leadership, but this was before Me Too. And I really truly believe that the leadership of the residency did everything that they could to help mitigate the situation, but it was a different culture back then. And anyway, we got through it. I got through it, but I will say that a few years ago, I saw a headline that there was a New York surgeon who was accused of sexual harassment by brushing up against female residents in the OR and sending selfies. I trained before the era of selfies and cell phones, thank goodness, so I wasn't subjected to this, but I thought, wow, this story sounds really familiar. And sure enough, it was the same person who had harassed me and many other female residents. And so I'm glad. I think that the culture of general surgery is changing. I think that this is not tolerated anymore. There's zero tolerance for this kind of behavior, but it did take a while for us to get there. More importantly in my life, though, were the people, the positives. And these two gentlemen in the photo on the right, Rick Rohr on the far left of the photo and Rich Freeman on the far right, I had never heard of transplant surgery before. I did not know that you could take an organ from one person and save the life of another person through transplantation. And these surgeons were just who I wanted to be as a doctor, who I wanted to be as a human being. And they were just also technically adept, the most technically adept surgeons in the hospital. And so I completely 100% credit them for my decision to go into transplant surgery. And if you're listening, Dr. Rohr and Dr. Freeman, thank you so much for training me. So they inspire me to pursue transplant surgery. And again, my friends were like, oh my God, why are you choosing transplant surgery? Of all the surgery subspecialties, you're not going to have a life. And, what are you doing, Irene? And I don't know. Again, it was something very deep inside of me, a calling. And so I went to Stanford University, where I pursued my fellowship in abdominal transplantation. This is the front of the old Stanford Hospital. I trained under the great Carlos Esquivel, who was my mentor. The photo on the top right is with me and Christine Wong, one of my best friends. She was a co-fellow of mine, and we're about to fly out to God knows where to procure an organ. This is actually a photograph of my hand holding, I have a very small hand, but here I am holding a baby pediatric liver that we implanted successfully into a patient. So it was this incredible, very intense 2 years. And then that brings me to current day. So now at Cedars-Sinai, I've been here for almost 10 years now. There is a paucity of women in the faculty. When I arrived, there were 6 women. Now there's around 10 women in the faculty. So we still have a lot of hoops to jump through in order to just improve that gender dynamic, especially amongst the faculty at Cedars. But in my first couple years as an attending, there were challenges. I had to redirect my energy, since I wasn't always welcome in the operating room, into the laboratory. Exercised a lot of patience to build my career, but it's been a really rewarding journey. So back to gender representation, the same problem that exists at MIT exists in academic medicine. And that is, when you get higher in the ranks of academic medicine, there's less female representation. So at the full professor level, which is in the green line, only a quarter of full professors are women in academic medicine. And I'm happy to report that I just found out that I was promoted to full professor here at Cedars-Sinai. So I'm joining that 25%. But why is that? Why do we lose women? Why don't we encourage women to pursue higher levels of academic rank? And then in terms of leadership, we see a similar pattern as well. So in 2018, the women who were section chiefs by gender, 30%, only a third were women compared to 71%. And it gets even more problematic when you look at the department chair level. So when you're looking at whole department leadership, it's only 18% women compared to the 82% men. So again, we have a lot of work to do to achieve gender equity. There's no reason, with more and more women entering surgery, why we can't achieve equal rates in all these different academic ranks and leadership roles. So I want to be honest. I'm just going to spend a second here and just talk about a word on having children. There may be some young alumni here today, and it's deeply personal. There's never a good time, it seems like, especially when you're developing your career. But I think that women have to face the reality that there is some limitations in our fertility. And so how you mitigate that, if you freeze your eggs early on, or if you pursue other ways of having a family, you just have to be cognizant of it. So my advice to medical students, to female residents, is have children when it's good for you. But you also have to be realistic about the demands of your career. Transplant surgery it would have been really difficult to be a mother during that time. So I chose to start my family after I finished fellowship training. And of course, it did not happen immediately. I had problems with fertility. I was 36 by the time I finished my fellowship. But thank God, I finally did have children. And this is a photograph of my sweet baby girl who was born in 2014. So I just want to acknowledge that, there are those constraints. So there are those biologic constraints, and would be happy to talk about it with anyone offline if that's of interest to you. So would I do it again? Would I be a transplant surgeon? And the answer is absolutely. They are technical, beautiful, big operations. They're life-saving. It makes me really feel like a doctor to help people. It's the combination of medicine and surgery. There's so much medicine and science involved in transplantation and a lot of opportunity for research. The people in the field are lovely. I've had a chance to touch so many lives. These are patients whose families have allowed me to have permission to use their photos, but patients I've personally transplanted in my journey as an attending. And so I'm really thankful for this opportunity. I also feel like it's my obligation to encourage women in transplantation, and I've trained many female residents and fellows who pursued a career in transplantation, and I'm very proud of all their accomplishments and all the women to come. There's plenty of room at the table for all women in transplantation and in leadership, and so I want to see all these trainees rise in their professions. So this is my last slide, but the life lessons I've learned so far in my life in a male-dominated field as to work really hard, and I try to stay focused on my family and my patients, to be true to yourself. So I am very feminine, and I have learned that it just is no use for me to try to remember the stats on a football game or try to integrate myself in that kind of conversation. I'm decidedly female, and that is who I am. So just be yourself, be genuine. I encourage everyone, even if you're later in your career, to take a gap year. Sometimes I still think and dream about taking a gap year now, even in my career. Don't pass on opportunities offered to you, even if they seem menial. So any opportunity I received early on in my career, I took it because it was an opportunity to learn something new or to demonstrate talents that may not have I've had an opportunity to use at that. And there's always opportunity for lifelong learning in all fields. And I love this from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but it always helps to be a little deaf. There's a lot of noise in every profession, and you just can't get amped up and reactive to everything you hear. So it helps to kind of put on the earmuffs and not respond to everything. So with that, thank you. And thank you, Winking, so much. Speaking of female leaders, we're so lucky to have a female leader like you, just raising community and connectivity, especially in these times. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you, and for just all the time that you put into this organization. I thank you and your leadership so much. So with that, I'd welcome any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my slideshow. That's okay?
Thank you, Dr. Kim. This is such a great presentation, and thank you for your bravery. And for,
I don't know about that.
Yeah. No, breaking the glass and bamboo ceiling for all of us to follow. So we have some great questions here. The first question is, what do you think of the prospects for transplanting pig kidneys into humans?
I think that it's not far away, is the short answer. There is incredible research, for those of you who don't know, of these genetically modified organs from pigs, where the antigens that have been previously prohibitive in allowing xenotransplant, that's the transplantation of animal organs into human beings, has been prohibitive. With these knockout genes, knock out genetically modified pigs, that reaction, that inflammatory reaction has been mitigated. It's still in its infancy, and I don't promise that to my patients, at least at Cedars-Sinai, anytime soon. But I do think that we're going to see many more clinical trials in the next year, human clinical trials with xenotransplant. So it's really exciting. Some organs are more difficult to cross that barrier than others, but in terms of kidney transplantation, I think we are very, very close. But it is very experimental. So if you are a family member, if you are on a kidney transplant list, for example, I would encourage you to seek living donor, deceased donor transplantation first before this technology.
Thank you so much. The second question is, oh, I just missed one of the questions that I like about, okay. Now looking back at your journey to the point you are at now, is there anything at all you would do differently? I think you answered that questions. And
oh yeah, sure, absolutely, all the time. I think, oh wow, I shouldn't have done that. I still think that my overall path to my current career, I would do it again 100% of the time. I think that mistakes, although you want to change them, are really helpful to experience mistakes, and we all make mistakes. So I think imperfection is totally good for people too. And that certainly is true for myself. And in my journey, I've made tons of mistakes, but I'm thankful for them and the lessons I've learned from them. I'm trying to think of an example right now that's not too embarrassing. But yeah, I've definitely made, I'll leave it at that. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes.
oh, we all make mistakes. I have some very embarrassing mistakes.
Yeah.
I think. So another question is, you've discussed gender disparity. Did you also encounter any racial discrimination during your training or career?
Oh, yes, definitely. I really abhor this whole like tiger mom label, for example, but I've been referred to as a tiger surgeon. And I just think it connotes all these stereotypes. And when I hear it, I kind of wince, but then for that kind of thing, I just let it go, because I think it's often meant to be a compliment, even though it just bugs me. But yeah, I think that there's also, this is Asian History Heritage Month as well in May. And so I've been thinking about those differences as well. Yes, I think it's really difficult now, especially with the whole Stop Asian Hate. And I have to say that there are times when I do feel more vulnerable. But again, maybe it's because I've been an outlier. I felt like an outlier in Bowling Green growing up as an Asian. And I just, got to live your life, and you have to be patient with others who may not have that, whatever you call it, cultural EQ that you may have. And so I give everyone the benefit of the doubt when something is said, even though it may grate on me, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it is a fine line between confronting them or just ignoring them. How do you decide? Because I have difficulty with that too.
Yeah, I think I tend to ignore more than confront, because I do think that people are well-meaning in general. And yes. So I try not to condemn people. I hope I don't. But, I think maybe create opportunities for education and learning for our friends who may make the mistake repeatedly. But I do think that sometimes, most of the time, it's unintentional.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your answer. Very wise.
I don't know about that.
We all try.
Yes.
Work in progress.
What I would do, what I would say, yeah.
So what advice do you have for even younger students, like high school students, that would be interested in pursuing a career in medicine? And this is a question from your old friend, Paul Cha of 1996.
Oh my God, Paul and I, we walked through Korea together. He's such a great friend. That's nice to see you, Paul. So what I would say for people interested in medicine, definitely shadow people who are in medicine. I did shadow somebody in high school, and it was a cardiologist, an interventional cardiologist, and it is a really exciting field now that I recognize. But I remember seeing angiogram after angiogram, and it was so boring. And so it kind of turned me off to medicine a little bit. So take it with a grain of salt. But I do think, exposure to medicine and seeing if it might be the kind of thing you want to do, especially for me, since I had no one else in my family who was a doctor. But creating those opportunities. I mentor many students and would be happy to talk to kids and people thinking about a career in medicine. I do it all the time, in fact, here in my role at Cedars-Sinai. But finding mentorship opportunities to see if it's something that you really want to do, and then if it's your dream, then to stay with it. And there are many different ways to become a doctor, and it is very competitive. But my friends who are in medicine and even transplant surgery in my division, we did not all have the same path, and we're all doing the same thing now. And so, stick to it if that's what you want to do.
Thank you. And at this point, we also should thank you for being the brave frontline workers that helped so many of us through COVID. And how has your work been impacted by COVID? What was it like during the initial peak?
Yeah, it was in 2020. It was really scary, to be quite honest. We didn't have a vaccination, and there was a dip in the number of transplants performed over a couple, 3 to 4 week period. We didn't even know how to test donors, if donors had COVID or were passing away from COVID. So we were doing a lot of figuring out in the transplant community, but then it did rebound afterwards. And even though there was a little bit of a dip, we rebounded. The vaccination was, of course, a game changer, and we require it at Cedars-Sinai. Many transplant institutions do not require it of their patients. We do at Cedars. But personally, for me, I was not really one of those people on the front lines. I have incredible respect and gratitude for those individuals who did serve on the front lines, intubating patients and exposing themselves on a daily basis. But because my field is so focused, I was able to focus on transplantation and the care of transplant patients. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And so you are just amazing. You hold so many important leadership positions in both national and international surgical and transplant societies. What is the best advice, training, experience, or tools that you have received?
So the best advice I received from Rick Rohr, one of my mentors, and that was to always learn, always have the perspective that you're a lifelong student. And even now, I'm 10 years into being an attending. I'm now one of the senior surgeons. I can't believe it. One of the senior level surgeons. But I'm still always learning, and I learn from my junior partners. I learn from even residents. I'm always learning, and I think that is true. If you have that attitude throughout your life, you will have such a richer life. And so I try to really adhere to that philosophy. I try to be humble with what I don't know and learn from those who are experts. And if it's something that I feel like I should know, then I try to become an expert on whatever subject it is. But that lifelong learning spirit, I think, is so typical of an MIT phenotype as well. Too. I think MIT does such a great job at, because there's so much we don't know when we get on campus. And I think that has carried on with me throughout my life.
Yeah, you're so open in learning.
Yeah, you have to be, tell me how you put those two vessels together robotically. Right now I'm learning robotic surgery, and I feel like an old dinosaur. All the residents are running circles around me. And so I'm very like deferential. Please tell me how you did that and show me, how I can improve my technique. And you're always learning, always. And so have that philosophy, enriching life.
Is it part of the Asian culture that we learn to be humble and always learning?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, stereotypes. I think we definitely have an Asian heritage, culture of respect of elders and of teachers, particularly. Not talking back to teachers. My teachers could have told me complete falsehoods in elementary school, and I wouldn't have challenged them one bit because of the way my parents raised me. So I do think that there is that humble upbringing that we have, for totally gross generalization. But I think other cultures share that, and maybe in general is a gross generalization. That's
Thank
true.
you. The next question is, do you have any advice for how men can educate themselves on supporting women and girls in male-dominated schools and workplaces? Great question.
That's a great question. So I have always been lifted up by both men and women. I've sought female mentorship oftentimes in my career, but I've had some amazing, superb male mentors. Andy Klein at Cedars-Sinai, Bruce Gewirtz have always elevated me in my career, and just really, really thoughtful. We need someone to serve on this search committee. Irene, would you consider this? This would be right up your alley. Thank you for that opportunity. Irene, we need someone to organize this conference. I thought about you. And so I do think that as a leader, even now that I'm in a leadership position, whether it's male or female, just having that transition when you become a leader, to just really be mindful of others. It's no longer just about your own career development, but now you are truly responsible for the promotion of everyone around you and team building. And when people in your group succeed, then you succeed as well. So I think that philosophy is great for all people, male or female. And as a man, maybe it's more striking to identify women for those positions or women for those opportunities if there is already an obvious gender discrepancy.
What a great advice. Thank you so much. And the next question. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
No need to be humble.
No, I don't know. Oh my God, I'm getting such terrible advice.
I really appreciate all this. So the next question, have you experienced bias that as a female Asian individual, we are expected to perhaps fit the stereotype of being quiet and to not make waves, which one does not follow if you are trying to excel in a male-dominated field such as yours, and also attain higher levels of leadership? Very serious question here.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to just being true to yourself. You should definitely not be complacent if you think that there's something that you need to speak up for. And I've definitely spoken up for myself in the past. So, I think it benefits males and females and all races to, when you first show up at a new job to wear beige and just kind of blend in instead of making waves when you first arrive. So I don't think that that's a particularly gendered or racial piece of advice. So I certainly think that that's true for me. Even if this is not my final stop and I'm going to another job, you don't show up the first day making all sorts of changes and rattling people and ruffling feathers. But I think the Asian female stereotype kind of goes both ways. So I'll give an example. When I was first a surgeon at Cedars, somebody said to a colleague, this colleague wouldn't let me do these procedures and said there was no room and tried to elbow me out in this cohort of operations that was being performed. And it just really, really annoyed me. And one of the residents said to this person, the director, said to him, she seems so sweet and nice, maybe there's a way that we can integrate her more into this program. And he said, oh, don't let that sweet facade trick you. She's really a tiger. She's really, she's going to backstab us, and I don't know where that came from. I heard about this obviously second or third hand, and it hurt me so much. But there were like two stereotypes at play. One person was saying that I was like the quiet female, like I didn't ruffle any feathers phenotype. And then the other person was like, no, I'm like this calculating, I don't know, aggressive Asian female. That's at least what it was, that seemed to me. So I feel like I've encountered those stereotypes both ways. And again, that's where the earmuffs come in handy. You just like, okay, this information all sucks. I'm just gonna put my blinders on and just do what I think is right. As long as I feel like I'm doing a good job, then all of it is background noise. So stand up for yourself when you think it's right. Don't feel like you have to behave in a certain way. But I think, being humble no matter who you are, especially when you first arrive in a new arena, is good advice.
Thank you. And be true to yourself, right?
Yeah,
hear
definitely.
So much from you. Yeah, so brave.
Well, I've tried to learn baseball and football statistics and participate in conversations, and it just goes terribly wrong. So I'm like, okay, I forget. I don't know anything about sports.
Same here. So have you ever had second thoughts or burnout related to your career? What keeps you motivated? What gets you up in the morning?
I definitely, the patients are so grateful and so wonderful. So I feel very privileged what I get to do. Transplant is really dramatic. It's a really dramatic field. You take people who are literally on death's door and you give them a solid organ, and then they walk out of the hospital. It's incredible. So the patients and their journeys are so fulfilling to me day in and day out. But of course, I've experienced burnout. It's a difficult field. I experienced burnout when I was trying to get pregnant, and I was like, why is this not happening? And this is never going to happen. And I have so much sympathy for those individuals who've tried and weren't able to have their own kids, and hopefully found other ways to start a family. So there are a lot of challenges. There's a lot of points of burnout and complicated parts of the path. But I'm so grateful for what I get to do. I love it. And recently I felt very fulfilled, not burned out. I'm lucky.
How do you overcome that valley when you're reaching burnout? What do you do?
Probably my family, my husband, my kids, my parents. So I have a few hobbies and interests, but really it's work. It's my family now. I was a much more interesting person before I had children, but the truth of the matter is that there's only so many hours in a day. And so, my family keeps me motivated, they keep me humble, they keep me honest. And then my job also does the same thing too. So, yeah.
Yes, this comes to the next question. Due to your limited time and energy, how do you manage to say no and balance your time for your family?
So saying no becomes more important as you rise in your career. And so now now I'm in a position where if I honestly don't have a lot of time to take on something, I say, this is great. Let me delegate that to somebody else on my team. And so an example of that was, as I was reaching this leadership role, I was also previously the director of our fellowship program, the abdominal transplant fellows. I managed their rotations and their academic schedule, and it was just too much. And so, as much as I wanted to hold on to that role, I recognized that I just wasn't going to do it as well as one of my colleagues could. So you have to delegate, you have to start saying no at some point. But yeah, it's an art form. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I'm away a lot in the evenings and attending various events, and sometimes my family does suffer for it. But yeah, that's part of the art of leadership, is learning also when to say no. I'm learning that still.
Yes, talking about that, our time is coming up. So one last question before we wrap up. What classes from your MIT undergraduate education do you use in your career? Mechanical engineering, biology, chemistry, computer science, etc., useful to you on a regular basis?
That is a great question. So I remember very distinctly, I took, and Melissa, I see Melissa Kanemasu is in the audience. I think it was 511 or 512. And for those of you who don't know, organic chemistry. So my first organic chemistry exam with Jack Kemp, I remember I failed it. I failed that test. I did so badly. But again, that network, living in my entry, everyone was so helpful. And I just started studying. I just was doing problem set after problem set in Barker Library every night, just studying, doing problem sets over and over again. And I eventually started doing well on the exams and getting A's. And that was so great for my confidence and a learning point in my life. That course and having that professor and realizing that if I put the time and energy into something, that I could master it. And I don't use organic chemistry per se in my day-to-day career, but it was such a confidence booster. And just coming from someone who failed her first test, I thought I had studied and I tried, but then I realized oh, I'm not learning in the right way maybe, or, I have to try something different. So that was a transformative experience early at MIT. And then the biology classes lay down the foundation. There's a lot of biology and science in transplant. And so understanding current papers, I just read a paper yesterday in Science on organelle transfusions and transplant. And a lot of that mumbo jumbo, I kind of understood, I kind of got the lingo because of MIT. So I'm very grateful for the foundation in science that it provided for me. I did not take any computer science classes. I should have, but I didn't.
We all wish that and avoid that, some of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you to Karina Fung for introducing us, Winking. Karina Fung, now Karina Yang. She is in my class and class 99. And she is so thoughtful, thought of us, bringing us together. So I just want to do a shout out to Karina as well.
Yeah, Karina said you're inspiring. And I can see that. And I'm sure all of our audience can see that. And we are so appreciative of you and full of gratitude.
Thank you.
Just you. And thank you to our audience, and gratitude to you guys too for supporting us. And we hope you have enjoyed this event. The recording of this webinar will be posted on the website of the MIT Chinese Alumni Group and the YouTube channel of the MIT Alumni Association. For the MIT community, please join us, the MIT Chinese Alumni Group, for free. And you don't have to be Chinese. For the public, Dr. Kim is not Chinese and everyone is welcome. For the public, please link in with me and message me to be added to our invite list. We look forward to your attendance in June of our MIT admissions webinar by Mr. Yi So, the Director of Educational Council of MIT. Let us unite and help one another. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. On behalf of Dr. Kim, the Chinese MIT Alumni Group, we thank you and hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.